You know that moment when your alarm goes off, and instead of feeling rested or ready, your very first thought is, I can't do this again today. Not because you're lazy. Not because you're ungrateful. But because somewhere along the way, your work, what used to give you purpose, structure, maybe even pride, has started to feel like a cage. And the worst part? You feel guilty for even thinking it. You look around and remind yourself, I have a job. A stable one. Good salary, decent benefits, a boss who's not a complete nightmare. I should be thankful. And yes, maybe you are thankful. But that doesn't erase the quiet truth sitting in your chest. You're exhausted, uninspired, and more than a little stuck. This video isn't about throwing everything away and walking out of your job with a dramatic I quit. Let's be real, we're grown-ups with responsibilities. Mortgage. Kids. Aging parents. Stability matters. But what if I told you there's a way to feel free without leaving it all behind? What if freedom wasn't about escape, but about small, intentional shifts that give you back yourself? Let's talk about how you can start feeling free right where you are. I want you to imagine something for a second. Think back to your 20s. Remember that version of you who still believed Monday could be exciting? Who made plans without checking 5 calendars first? Who stayed up until 2 a.m. dreaming out loud about the future? That version of you isn't gone. They're just buried under layers of routine, pressure, and years of being realistic. And the first way to dig them out is to take back your mornings. I know. You've heard this a million times, take control of your mornings. But I'm not talking about the trendy stuff. You don't need to wake up at 4:30, do hot yoga in candlelight, and journal about your chakras. I mean something simpler. More human. I mean, take 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, before you give the world anything. Before you check your phone, before the kids wake up, before you become boss or manager or parent or spouse or fill in the blank title, just be you. Sit with a cup of coffee in silence. Step outside and let the morning air hit your face. Read one page of a book that reminds you who you are. Or just breathe. These small moments are resistance. They are proof that you are still in charge of your time, at least a slice of it. You'd be surprised how much lighter your day feels when it starts on your terms. Because suddenly, you're not just reacting. You're choosing. And freedom, at its core, is about the power to choose. Now let's talk about something that hits a little deeper, emotional burnout. Not just the tired you need sleep kind. I'm talking about the kind where your soul feels tired. When even good things don't feel good anymore. When people ask you how you're doing and the best you can offer is, I'm fine. Here's the truth that no one told us in our 20s, the price of stability is often emotional invisibility. You become reliable, competent, solid, so solid, in fact, that people stop asking if you need help. And maybe you've stopped asking, too. That's why the second shift is this: build one space in your life where you get to feel fully human again. Not functional. Not efficient. Just human. It could be a weekly dinner with friends where you swear off talking about work. It could be joining a choir, a running group, a pottery class, even a silly online forum where you talk about your favorite childhood cartoons. Whatever gives you joy with no productivity attached, that's your pocket of oxygen. Because when your job becomes your entire identity, even a good job starts to feel like a prison. But when you remember who you are outside of it, your humor, your passions, your quirks, you start to reclaim the space between the bars. And no, this doesn't require a complete life makeover. You don't need to find your passion or turn your hobby into a business. You just need to remember you're a person, not a machine. I had a friend, let's call her Mai. She worked in finance. She was great at it. Respected. Well paid. But she was miserable. Not in a crisis kind of way, just a slow, quiet unraveling. Her solution wasn't to quit and move to Bali. She started doing improv once a week. That's it. One night a week, she became a completely different person. She laughed, messed up lines, made silly faces, and left that space every time feeling lighter. And that lightness bled into everything else. She told me one day, I didn't leave my job. I just stopped letting it define me. That sentence stuck with me. That's the kind of freedom we're talking about. You don't have to flip your life upside down. But you do have to stop waiting for someone else to hand you the key to your own cage. Start by carving out moments of choice. Spaces of humanity. A breath before the race. A laugh in the middle of the grind. You're still in there. The you who dreamed big. The you who used to be curious. The you who wanted more than just a paycheck and a weekend. And you don't need to quit your job to find them again. You just need to start listening. So, now that we've opened the door a little, just cracked it enough to let in some air, you might be wondering, okay, but what if I've already done that? What if I'm still stuck, even with the coffee and silence and the Thursday night pottery class? I hear you. Because there's another layer that creeps in once we hit midlife. It's that haunting feeling of being on autopilot. You wake up, get through your day, check a few boxes, answer a few emails, pay the bills, try to be present for your kids, your partner, your aging parents, and then suddenly it's bedtime again. Repeat. 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 And the worst part? You start to believe that maybe this is just how it is now. That this is all you can expect. That freedom is something you missed, not something you can still create. But I want to challenge that idea. I want you to consider this. What if your job isn't a trap? What if the real trap is routine without reflection? Let me explain. It's not the meetings, or the spreadsheets, or the long commutes. It's the fact that, somewhere along the way, you stopped asking why. Why do I take this route to work? Why do I say yes to every task, even when I'm drowning? Why do I stay quiet in meetings when I know I have something valuable to say? The third shift is deceptively simple. Question your autopilot. You don't have to change everything, just start noticing. That awareness alone is powerful. Because once you see the pattern, you can change the pattern. Take on, for example. He was a senior manager in logistics. For over a decade, he ate lunch at his desk every single day. Not because he had to. Just because that's what he always did. One day, almost on accident, he walked to a park down the block. Sat on a bench. Ate a sandwich. That one small switch changed everything. He started doing it once a week. Then twice. Then every day. And he told me later, those 20 minutes became the most honest part of my day. I remembered what thinking felt like, not just reacting. And thinking? It brings you back to life. Because thinking leads to clarity. Clarity leads to choice. And choice is freedom. But here's the catch, thinking doesn't just magically happen. Not in a world designed to keep you scrolling, checking, responding. You have to protect space for it. So here's something you can try. Set aside 15 minutes a day, just 15, for what I call sacred time. No phone. No emails. No multitasking. Just you and a notebook, a walk, a quiet room, whatever works. Ask yourself questions like, what part of my job drains me the most? What part, if any, still lights me up? What do I miss doing? What's one small thing I'd change if I believed I could? Write them down. Not for performance. Not to show anyone. Just for you. This isn't about being dramatic or drastic. It's about getting honest again. About remembering yourself. Because here's the truth, most people don't need a new job. They need a new relationship with the one they have. And that brings us to something deeper, one of the biggest freedom blockers I see in people in their 40s. It's the silent agreement we've made with ourselves, this is as good as it gets. You don't say it out loud. You might not even realize you believe it. But it shows up in the way you stop trying. The way you dismiss new ideas. The way you flinch when someone asks what your dream is and you answer with a nervous laugh. But here's what I've learned, after talking to hundreds of people at this stage in life: the minute you give yourself permission to want again, the game changes. You don't need to abandon your job. You don't need to be reckless. You just need to stop believing that wanting more makes you ungrateful. Wanting more joy, more ease, more meaning, isn't selfish. It's the most human thing about you. So, what would happen if you gave yourself permission to explore again? To learn something new? To mess around with a side project? To look at your skills, not as boxes on a resume, but as building blocks for something bigger? You might not act on it right away. That's okay. Even thinking differently is a rebellion. Even entertaining new possibilities is a step toward freedom. That's why so many people say they feel alive again just by starting something small. A blog. A garden. A DIY home project. A language class. Not because they'll make money or change the world with it, but because it makes them feel awake. One woman I met, in Hong, had worked in human resources for nearly 2 decades. She told me she felt invisible, uninspired. One day, she bought a second-hand camera and started taking portraits of her neighbors. No business plan. No goal. Just curiosity. And those photos? They changed her life. Not her career, not yet. But her confidence. Her energy. Her sense of possibility. That quiet joy spilled into her job, her family, her whole being. That's the freedom I'm talking about. The kind you create in the margins of your life. The kind that doesn't require permission or perfection, just intention. And it starts with questioning the script. Interrupting the pattern. Daring to want again. Not tomorrow. Not when things settle down. Now. So maybe by now, there's this small voice in you, one you haven't heard in a while, whispering, maybe I don't have to stay stuck. And that whisper? It matters. Because everything you change in your life starts not with a giant leap, but with a tiny shift in belief. And there's one final shift we haven't talked about yet, the most powerful one, and probably the hardest. It's not about how you start your day, or what you do after work, or how many hobbies you pick up on the weekend. It's about how you see yourself when you're in the middle of it all. When you're knee-deep in responsibility. When you've been needed by everyone else for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be seen for who you are, not just what you do. This last shift is all about reclaiming your worth from your work. You are not your title. You are not your performance reviews. You are not your productivity levels. And I know that sounds obvious. But really, how many times have you felt like a failure on the days you didn't tick enough boxes? How many evenings have you gone to bed frustrated not because something terrible happened, but because you felt like you didn't do enough? That mindset is a trap. And the longer you're in it, the smaller your world becomes. So, what if we let go of that version of success? The one shaped by external milestones and other people's approval? What if success, for you now, is measured differently? Not by how fast you rise, but how deep your peace is. Not by the ladder you climb, but the joy you feel at the end of the day. Not by how many things you manage, but how fully you show up to the one thing that matters most. I once had a conversation with a man named Min. He'd been in the same job for over 20 years. Mid-level management. Quiet guy. Nothing flashy. One day I asked him, "Do you like what you do?" And he smiled and said, "I like who I am while I do it." That's enough. That hit me hard. Because sometimes, you can't change your job right away. But you can change who you decide to be inside of it. Min had boundaries. He said no when he was overwhelmed. He left on time. He brought banana cake to the office every Friday because it made his team happy. He made his job a human space, not a mechanical one. And that made all the difference. It's easy to forget, especially in your 40s, that you still have power. That freedom isn't just for the people with flexible hours or remote gigs or no kids or no mortgage. That freedom doesn't always mean leaving. It can mean liberating the way you exist in what you already have. Maybe your job won't ever be your dream job. That's okay. It doesn't have to be. It just has to stop stealing the life out of you. You can work your job and feel alive. You can have responsibilities and have dreams. You can be dependable and have boundaries. You can be grateful and still want more. These are not contradictions. They are the full, beautiful, complicated truths of being a grown-up. And if no one's told you this lately, you are allowed to feel stuck and still believe in change. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you that used to be satisfied with just getting through it. You are allowed to want mornings that feel calm, evenings that feel spacious, and days that don't end with you collapsing on the couch with your soul running on empty. You're allowed to be more than your job, even if your job is where you spend most of your time. And if any part of this message is resonating with you, then you've already taken the first step. You've started listening to that part of you that refuses to give up on joy, on aliveness, on becoming. So what's next? Maybe it's taking back your morning. Maybe it's joining the class you keep bookmarking and ignoring. Maybe it's talking to your boss and asking for one small change in your schedule that could shift everything. Maybe it's just going for a walk tonight and letting yourself dream again, without guilt. You don't need to change everything. You just need to change one thing. Because one thing leads to another. And before you know it, the life that used to feel like a trap starts to feel like something else. Something you get to choose. Something that includes you again. So if you've been feeling stuck, boxed in, running on autopilot, let this be your sign. Not a sign to quit. Not a sign to throw everything away. A sign to reclaim. Reclaim your voice. Reclaim your time. Reclaim your joy. You deserve to feel free. Not someday. Not when the kids are older. Not when you retire. Now. Here's to mornings with purpose. Workdays with breathing room. Evenings with laughter. And a life that feels a little more like yours again. If this spoke to you, drop a comment. Let me know what small shift you're making. And if you found something valuable here, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. You're just getting started. And maybe, just maybe, this whole time, the freedom you were searching for wasn't about running away from your job at all. Maybe it was about remembering that you are more than what the world expects of you. You are more than the performance reviews, the KPIs, the meetings that drag, and the inbox that never empties. You are someone who has survived enough to know what matters. Someone who's earned every wrinkle of wisdom, every moment of clarity that whispers, hey, there's more. And that more might not come with a paycheck. It might not look impressive on paper. But it'll feel like peace in your chest. Like space to breathe. Like energy you thought you lost for good coming back in quiet waves. Because freedom, real freedom, isn't loud. It's not quitting in dramatic fashion or moving to an island or tossing your phone in a lake. It's subtle. It's in the way you say no to what drains you and yes to what lifts you, even if that yes is just 15 minutes of stillness a day. It's in showing up to the same job, but with a different spirit. With boundaries. With curiosity. With softness where you used to be hardened. With the courage to say, I want joy, too. And that's not selfish. It's sacred. You matter as you are, not just as the role you play. Your well-being matters. Your voice matters. Your dreams, yes, even the ones you buried when life got busy, matter. And they're still there, waiting patiently under the surface, ready to be dusted off, listened to, loved back to life. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need to believe, truly believe, that change is allowed. That freedom doesn't have to be earned. It can be claimed, quietly, in the everyday choices you make. So, if you've been holding your breath for a long time, take this as permission to exhale. If you've been running on fumes, take this as a chance to refill your tank. And if you've forgotten how powerful, how valuable, how whole you really are, let this be the reminder that brings you back to yourself. Not a better version. Not a shinier one. Just you. Real, messy, brilliant, tired but hopeful you. You've still got time. You've still got heart. And you've still got a say in how this chapter unfolds. So go write it your way. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If this message stirred something in you, please share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Maybe a friend, a partner, a coworker who's silently carrying the same weight. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. We're building a community here of people who refuse to sleepwalk through the second half of their lives. Of people who choose meaning, movement, and maybe even a little magic. Until next time, take care of yourself. Really take care. Because the world needs the whole you, not just the busy, burned out version. Here's to living stronger, smarter, and more freely, no matter what number is printed on your ID. You've got this.